He knew I was.
Hi.
Also, you can keep doing it.
You're Alice, right?
No, I
So I thought that last piece that you wrote about all the enforcement bills, I thought that you did a really good job.
Thank you.
It's easy for us from my side to get all high and mighty and not stay objective and not really truly think about putting ourselves in the other person's shoes. Anyway, I just thought that you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Very good.
Here at the back of it.
Appreciate that. This one's pretty simple and straightforward. It's been free. We're going to go really quick. I think Kelly Schultz is going to she got permission.
Oh, and if you please feel free to use the.
Oh, thank you. I think I'll be okay.
Just to kind of hurry we get through.
My iPad's battery lasts way longer than my computer, my crappy work computer.
And the Pacific Brown's amendment had been done. Because I could have just said, county paid for everybody in a court case. It's required representation of everybody. County is responsible for paying for that, and not everybody needs representation.
Right, so it's not. And it wouldn't really affect the
Even if we could have, they weren't going to change it to a may, so we had to.
we would.
And I had the house side all done, so we did that. Didn't meet that deadline on the
And well, that's part of the reason why.
Yeah, and because of that, we're going to get to the house quickly.
You don't already.
See what they want to add to it.
It's all part of the
So we'll have time.
Oh.
Thank you.
What hat do you have on now? I'm Sharon for Sharon. Okay, you just Florida? Okay.
Oh my God.
All that. Oh, yeah. You what?
Bills or anything exciting?
That was my, I can go to you. Every time I.
He's a good guy. I might wonder what he said about.
And we were just talking about that.
Every year. One man caught up and blow up on the I have not seen her yet. Does it listen when you talk to it?
Just talk back, talk. That's it.
Best day of my life so far.
All right.
All right. How are you doing?
That's okay. Can I run over the ground? Or I'm
It's not too bad inside.
No, not.
I got 2 seats.
Two of my favorite people.
Not much.
On reentry. Right
Hey.
I have no idea. I'm somewhere up there. Committee hearing is. Mine's gonna go first.
You get my text or email late. I wouldn't stick around too long though. It's stressed out.
Hey, Alex. Thank you so much.
There, if you want to focus while we're doing the college work.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. But more obviously is.
I'm gonna, whatever people don't say, that's what I'll say. Technically, I'm Sharon Williams today. I look like Sharon Williams. Okay. I think that's a good idea. That was cold.
That was my nice.
Yeah.
I know. I wonder if I got it.
Good morning, still on this cold and eventually snowy day. Welcome to the House Committee on Children and Families. Today we were going to take up and hear 4 bills. And at this time, Mr. Secretary, will you call the roll?
Representative Franklin, Chair.
Here.
Representative Neely, Vice Chair. Here. Representative Meredith, Ranking Member. Representative Beard. Here. Representative Bratton. Representative Brown.
Here.
Representative Gannon.
Here.
Representative Haithner.
Here.
Representative Lauer.
Here.
Representative Newman.
Here.
Representative Noor. Representative Rimmel.
Here.
Thank you. I wanted to notify the committee members that the report from the summer, or from the interim, I guess, on the Planned Parenthood investigation is completed and is available for your signature. And the Secretary, Mr. Cole, has that. And I think the first bill that I want to take up today is Representative Engler. It is House Bill 1565.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee for hearing this bill. This is HB 1565. For the record, I'm Kevin Engler from the 116th. If you would indulge me, last year's bill on this was House Bill 466, which you heard, plus Senate Bill, which was Senator Dempsey's Bill 322. What this is dealing with the problem that we started working on about 6 years ago, I guess, in the Senate with Senator Dempsey. The problem we had is on the spend down limits for our most vulnerable is we set them in 1972. They went in effect in 1973. I know some of you remember that. Some of you probably weren't born at that time, but things were a little cheaper then. And we went through this last year of all the cost of the average cost of a house and the average cost of a car and the average cost of a repair. But we've never adjusted them. Back when we started working on this, we were wanting to adjust it all at once. And it ran into some problems fiscally. And what we've done is, and all we've done from last year, we had it approved, both the Senate and the House. We had it sitting on the docket ready to go, and it died at last week, along with a bunch of others. But what we've done is just moved everything out 1 year. Everything else is the exact same. If you remember what we've done, instead of trying to bring us up to where The inflation adjustment from the $999 in today's dollars would be about $7,500. Instead of trying to bring it up to $7,500, we worked with the budget director and both the House and the Senate saying, could we do this in a systematic manner and do it $1,000 a year for 5 years, ending in 2021, so that we could adjust the budget accordingly. And so that if something would happen that our figures weren't correct, that we could suspend or stop it. And then at that point, we're going to be about $3,000 under the buying power. Because at that point, if inflation is at 3%, by the time this is fully implemented 5 years from now, we're already going to be a couple $1,000s behind. And what we've done is put in there is having the department come up with a cost of living from that point. So we will never catch up, but we will at least make it. Because when somebody has to spend down to $999 back in '72, okay, when your average car repair bill was about $60, now it's $500. When your set of tires, you just can't live like that and have any money for any emergencies, even high utility bills and the like. So I've asked, we had people testify last year. This committee, I believe, it passed it unanimously. Nothing has changed except the years have been put out 1 year to reflect the fact that it's a year later. Still takes 5 years to implement. We still, the fiscal note, if you do not have it, I brought some copies because some people don't have it. Remember last year we disputed it because even the Senate budget people had said what they were doing is basing it every month. People would spend down their money. Every month they'd spend down their money. Every month. In reality, most of them are going to keep it for emergencies and they're going to be at their limit and they're not going to be going up and down. So John, if I could get my intern to pass these around if anybody's wanting. We went on the assumption from the Senate last year, it was going to be about $4 million. And it would then have to be budgeted in over the next 5 years as it goes up. And both, we're back here. These they're the ones that vote, so we're concerned about that. Anyway, that's where it's at. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Same thing as we looked at last year, but we've got several people that have come from over the state to testify and talk about their particular situation. Where this started was years ago when I was in the Senate. I had somebody call me about every other third month from DeSoto. And the gentleman was quadriplegic in a wheelchair, and he would break down and cry every month about telling me, do I pay my utility bill this month or do I buy food? All right, I had this utility breakdown. I had this refrigerator breakdown. Do I buy a refrigerator or do I buy food? And so we'd have this discussion so many times because he said the things that cost so much now, the $9.99 will not. And they said, I gotta stash money anytime I can just for property tax, things like that. And anyway, that's the background of this bill. You all are familiar with it. I'd be happy to answer questions. Otherwise, there's several people that would like to testify. I ask that they keep their testimony short. Respect, there's several hearings that you have today, and we have a lot of people that can come. We can bring in, I had more than a dozen people call me and ask me if they could come up and testify, and I asked just some representative groups to come testify. Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. Representative Lauer.
Claire.
You may.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative, thank you for, again, bringing this forward. We discussed this last year, and I know that there was a Senate version, and it was nearly all the way through. Is that correct?
Correct. It was on. We put another amendment on, and we took it off. They said it went over there. They were going to approve it. Then they wanted to take that amendment off. They sent it back over. We took that amendment off. We sent it to them for the final blessing, and it died.
Okay, so we are just picking up where we left off, basically.
I got the promise from some of the people in the Senate and Speaker that they knew that this was a very big bill that would affect a lot of people around the state, and they wouldn't let it do that again if we could get over quickly. So we sent it the first day, came back, and have been ready for it. So we're hoping that this is back fast track because there's a lot of people depending on it.
Well, thank you. And
I think you helped farm it last year with one of the pieces, yes.
Yeah, and one of the things is that I think this is a very quiet but issue that's being out there because we have a lot of folks who just won't say anything about it. But I've had some constituents who are truly in this situation where a wife has their husband in a facility and does not have money to live, to buy house shoes, to do any kind of thing, to the point of being in tears, and they have no place else to go.
And we allow them to keep their house, but if something breaks,
There's nothing.
there's nothing.
There's
If they have a hailstorm like we did, and you have to pay a deductible, there's nothing.
That's right.
So it puts them in a no-win situation.
So, very supportive, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Representative Meredith.
To inquire, if you may.
Yes.
In the bill, it says that with the consumer price index, if it goes up, that there will be an increase in this. Is it only an increase, or can it go down? It's on page 4 here.
Yes. Theoretically, very similar to Social Security cost of living. They never use a negative index. So theoretically it could, but it's never happened.
Do we need to put anything in there that states that?
I don't think so. I think we're better off keeping it so that we can take it over to the other body and say, this is the exact thing you all voted on and passed.
Right, because the value of your house can shrink, but your electric bill doesn't.
Right, and that's, you're right. Medical, the things that the seniors and the disabled spend the most money on have actually went up higher than the normal inflation rate, but they do adjust it for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Engler, does this bill increase benefits for the current population fall, or no?
It's not an expansion. All it is an adjustment in the spend down amount. That's it. So you won't be seeing a large amount of people that would conceivably go on. The amount, that was the other thing in the fiscal note last year that was kind of funny, because you got to know human nature. They said that there was thousands of people that had between 1,000 and 2,000 in their savings account, but they didn't qualify because they weren't smart enough to go down under $2,000. And suddenly we put it to 2,000 and all these people were going to come on the system. I got news for you. When you get down under 2,000 and you've got to qualify for Medicaid, you go ahead and spend down to the under $999. That's just, I don't know of anybody in that theoretical limit, because once you've gotten there, the $300 is less than what your benefits you get 1 month. So you go ahead and spend it down to under the $999. If you have to, you put it in cash in your mattress to show that you're under $1,000. That's just not a, that's a theoretical thing that fiscal review looked at and said, well, I guess there's got to be thousands of people between 1,000 and 2,000, and the next year there's got to be thousands of people. But once you get down and all of your assets go below that point, people just don't do that. They go ahead and spend under the $999. That's reality.
All right, will there be a new population then eligible?
Only if you believe the theory that there's a lot of people out there sitting between $1,000 and $2,000 in their savings account, and they haven't qualified for the program to begin with, and they're going to qualify now.
Okay, so.
But if you go to any financial planner or any senior planner, they will tell you to go ahead and give the grandkids birthday presents or something and get it under 900. Not that way you qualify. That's what you do. We've set up the rules of the game for people to do that. And what we're saying is those are 1972 rules, and that's just not.
All right.
At least it was when I was in 7th grade in 72.
So the impact to general revenue then is from just the current, basically the current population receiving the increases.
Correct.
Accounted for each year that's here.
Well, right now they based it on each month. They would spend down each month, and they would go ahead and take it down. I'm telling you, most people are using this for their emergency money, and they are going to let it go. That's why we had Senator Schaefer, and they did some outside research, and they estimated it cost of about $4 million. It costs millions of dollars, but it's only fair. And so if it's $4 million, he said that they could adjust it, and that's why if we give them some time, that's what we said down. If we don't even start it this year, we do it next year, so they can do it in next year's budget, and they do it the following year. If, for God forbid, the numbers come in and it's 40 million instead of 4 million, they can adjust it at that point and say, okay, we've got to have something to stop this process. This isn't going to work. But from what his calculations were, that this just wasn't going to happen. And they were prepared to put it in the budget last year. Both sides were prepared to put it in for this current year that we're working on now until it's off the rails.
You're thinking 4 million.
That's what the senator had estimated about that. He thought that would be an annual increase that they could absorb over the years, but that's why they wanted to do it in a series of years so they can stop and look at it, stop and look at it.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Do you have witnesses then?
I assume so. There were several people who said that they would like to. I just asked them to keep it brief and ask a few of them if they would just have somebody speak for the group.
I'll call them. Is there anyone here that is in favor, who is a citizen, who has driven a long way on a snowy day to be here today and simply wants to share their story?
I think most of them have got to be representatives of the groups now.
Okay, great. And that's certainly understandable. That's certainly understandable. All right. Those in favor of the bill, would you please come and speak to the committee?
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. We appreciate you hearing this piece of legislation. There are several individuals from St. Louis. Oh, my name is Kathy Brown. I'm the Director of Public Policy and Advocacy at Paraquad. We're the Center for Independent Living that serves the greater St. Louis area. There were many individuals whom this directly impacts that would have loved to come here today to talk with you. Two things kept them from doing that. One is the weather, and the second is they're too poor. They can only have $999 in the bank, and they have to live on $834 a month. So a trip like this is a significant expense in time, energy, and resources. So hopefully I can represent some of their issues on their behalf. Again, thank you for hearing this legislation and being able to move swiftly through the process. Since you guys already sort of discussed some of the details around the asset limits and some of the questions that you had, I sort of want to speak conceptually to this issue of economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disabilities. Economic self-sufficiency, poverty, and employment really are the next frontier of the disability rights movement. We've made progress in a lot of areas in the disability rights movement, like accessibility, inclusive education, access to home and community-based services, but we have failed to, in the words of Senator Tom Harkin, create an accessible pathway from deep poverty to the mainstream of the American middle class for individuals with disabilities. 25 years ago when the ADA was passed, it explicitly stated that economic self-sufficiency was one of the goals of the law, but still today, individuals with disabilities are twice as likely than any other minority population to live in poverty. One of the reasons that some people with disabilities are artificially sentenced to a lifetime of abject poverty when they could otherwise be more self-sufficient and independent is a need for supports and services that only Medicaid provides. We have inadvertently created a system of support that requires that a person resign themselves to a lifetime of poverty and dependence. And that is certainly not the goal of any social program. It is not advantageous for the state or for an individual to artificially and purposefully get and remain as poor as possible for as long as possible, just so a person can live in the community with the supports they need to get out of bed in the morning. It's really important to remember that people with disabilities who have significant support needs have a very unique relationship to the Medicaid program. A person with a spinal cord injury who needs someone to come to their home to help get them out of bed in the morning so they can go to work or go about their day cannot go to Blue Cross and Blue Shield and say, I'll take the disability package and I'll pay my premium like everyone else who accesses health care, because there's no other public or private option for that kind of support. Medicaid is the only game in town. So unless a person can afford to private pay out of pocket, and some of you know my boss, Amy Waymeyer, who has a significant disability, she shares with people that her personal assistance services cost her about $3,000 a month out of pocket, not something that's possible for most people. most people need to access Medicaid for those services. So in order to access these disability-specific, exclusively Medicaid-funded services, a person with a disability can't have more than $834 a month or more than $1,000 in the bank. And it is of note that the age, blind, and disabled category of eligibility is the only one for whom we apply this asset limit. It requires people to be asset poor, defined as lacking 3 months savings in case all their income was cut off. I think we're all sort of told you have to have at least 3 months living expenses in the bank. We force people to be irresponsible and dependent on charity and government programs by keeping asset limits very low. I think that there's a lot of policy work to be done on this issue to flip the system so that it incentivizes economic self-sufficiency for people with disabilities. I think Kevin Engler's bill is a really important piece of that puzzle so that people can save for unexpected expenses, keep more of their own money to meet their own financial obligations, and try to achieve some level of economic self-sufficiency. So, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Please leave us a witness form.
Yes.
Just let me gauge the room. How many folks are here today to testify in favor of this bill? Okay, great. And then is there anyone here in opposition to the bill? Is there anyone here for informational purposes only? Okay. Let's go ahead and do informational purposes only next, and then we'll get back to in favor.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Laura Muse. I'm the Disability Program Representative for the Governor's Council on Disability, and I'm here today on behalf of Robert Hahn, our Executive Director, who could not attend. He's sorry about that.
Welcome. Good to have you.
Thank you. Each year, we conduct a legislative priorities poll that we send out to individuals with disabilities, their family members, and others involved in the disability community, like those you see behind me. In this year's poll, 60.62% of people strongly agree that we should increase the asset limit to $5,000 for individuals and $10,000 for couples, as the bill would eventually do, and 22.20% agreed. So our executive committee of our Governor's Council on Disability has decided this is our top legislative priority for 2016, and it will be voted on by the full council at a February 8th meeting. I am now ready to take any questions if anyone has any.
Are there any questions for this witness? See that? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to say that that was one of the best for informational purposes testimonies that I've had for my bills. It sounded pretty positive to me.
Yeah, sure, yeah. All right. Those in support, please come forward.
Oh, you can go? Okay, yeah. Go ahead. Okay, so we can, okay. Why don't you cover this side?
All right, everyone aside. Come over back.
Hang left.
All right. Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Andrew Lackey, and I am the Public Policy Analyst for the Missouri Developmental Disabilities Council. We are a council of individuals with developmental disabilities, that's disabilities that are acquired before the age of 21, and their families. And we advocate for and try to improve the lives of individuals with developmental disabilities as they attempt to live full integrated lives in the community. And I have testimony today on behalf of Sharon Williams, who is the chair of the Missouri Developmental Disabilities Council, and the council supports raising the asset limits, and Representative Engler's bill, as the council has for the previous 2 years. Just to echo briefly, this bill would allow people with disabilities to be less dependent on government services to achieve what they what they want and need in life, like saving for an accessible vehicle or things that would maybe allow them to go to work. So that's yet another thing that I think could be beneficial and for your consideration. And I thank you for your time, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lackey. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Be sure to leave us a witness form. Thank you.
That's it.
Got the photo op going on here.
Done it? No, we're.
I got it. Got it, Jim. Okay.
Very nice. All right, others in support.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Bill Gamble. I'm representing the Missouri Association of County Boards for Developmental Disability Services, and we're in favor. I think the group I represent, some of you might know them as the Senate Bill 40 boards, and to extend my testimony, the name of my client is longer than my testimony. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mrs. Snodgrass, Missouri Coalition for Community Behavioral Health Care. Our agencies provide treatment to those with serious mental illness, and spin down is a significant issue for our population because what happens is when they go into spin down, they lose both their physical health care and they often lose their mental health treatment and their prescription drugs, which is absolutely detrimental to those that have schizophrenia or bipolar or other serious mental illness. So it's a significant issue. We see it oftentimes if individuals go into spin down, sometimes they end the criminal justice system. So we believe that the fiscal note is never accurate on this bill because there are a lot of other things that aren't accounted for. So we wholeheartedly support this bill, believe it helps individuals with serious mental illness. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Representative Mayor. Go ahead with me.
Could you please say your name and who you're representing a little slower?
Sorry, I am battling laryngitis and it's not contagious. Misty Snodgrass with the Missouri Coalition for Community Behavioral Health Care. And we are the safety net mental health providers throughout the state of Missouri. So everyone in the state of Missouri, our agencies cover.
All right. Thank you very much. Be sure to leave us witness form.
I know you all were hoping that it was continued.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Shantz, and I'm the Executive Director of the Missouri Alliance for Home Care, a trade association representing about 225 providers of home and community-based services around the state. I don't think I can add anything to the wonderful testimony that you've received today. This is a bill we very much are in support of and appreciate your thoughtful consideration.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My name is Wayne Lee, disability advocate. I have here some written testimony that I'll just let you go ahead and have. And I'm not able to add anything anymore either. I have to say, that those of us with disabilities, we will be very, very happy to be able to store away some money to use at a time like the day of Christmas, when we need that extra money to go ahead and make some purchases that we've used, buy gifts, etc. It'll be great to have that. Take care of those tires if you need them. I don't drive, but it'll be very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your testimony. Others in support?
Mike White, Catholic Conference. My hearing notice said noon. I think that was gut watch. But anyway, we definitely support this bill. In fact, I thought maybe we passed it last year. We really need to do this. It's not a major expense, but it means a lot to folks. And I think we ought to pass this thing. So I hope we do this year.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Others in support? I'm going to just give the chance if there's anyone in opposition to come forward. All right. Closing comments.
Well, thank you. Thank you for putting this as priority. And we didn't have groups from the seniors, which is just as big. If you're putting your spouse in a home that I see, unfortunately, so many times, it's a major problem, one of the life-changing events. And so we hope your consideration will continue to be positive.
Thank you very much. I just want to be sure and go over that we received all the witness forms from everyone who
Would you like to bring them
testified
up?
before the committee. No, I just wanted to clerically take care of that. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1565. All right. Okay. The next bill that we're going to go to is House Bill 1433, Representative Neely, and I understand it's a call-in that's going to happen.
Yeah, I have one handout if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me House Bill 1433. This is identical to the bill that passed out of this committee last year, House Bill 684, and up 9 on the Senate calendar the last 2 weeks of session. What this bill does is it provides families a temporary home for children while parents are in crisis. Sometimes there's unforeseen events that happen in different families' lives, whether it's homelessness, medical crisis, family conflict, substance abuse, or job loss, or prison. I just named a few things that could happen to families. And what we want to do is give those families some help when they need it, and not punish them. So we want them to, if they have substance abuse, we want them to go into rehab and get off drugs. But we don't want to penalize them and say that if you're going to do the best thing, we don't want to penalize them and take their kids away. And if you refer in what section that helps that, or is section 4 of the bill, I'll go ahead and read that. This section shall not constitute as abandonment, abuse, or neglect as defined in the laws unless the parent or guardian fails to take custody of the child or execute a power of attorney after 1 year. So what we're saying to families is we want those families to go out and get help and seek help. And if they can't take care of their kids for a period of time, then it's okay for them to pass custody of their kids on a temporary basis. So this bill seeks to try to prevent kids going into foster care. So the families that would be utilized in this, these are volunteer families that are extensively screened, and then also they are not paid anything. So it's strictly on a voluntary basis on both sides, the parents and volunteer families. Other states that have passed this, such as Oregon and in Chicago, Cook County, you see after a couple of years of it being implemented, you see kids going in foster care drop by nearly 20%, which would save the state millions of dollars. Also in this program, the average stay is 44 days and foster care is over a year. So we want to preempt kids getting neglected and get families the help that they need. So with that, I'll take any questions. Also, let me add one more thing. There was one amendment that was added that I kept in the bill from this committee, and that's in the first part of the bill, last sentence of 210.1109, and it says the Children's Division is authorized to exercise its discretion in selecting community service programs. So I thought that was a good idea, so I kept that in the bill.
All right, very good. Do you have someone calling in?
I do. So I can call them
Do you
now.
need some assistance with that, or is that?
Well, I didn't know if there was questions first.
Okay. Well, I want to go back and clarify some things so we're absolutely clear about what you are wanting to do. What I see in the bill is it gives the power to the parent who currently is in charge of the care and custody of the child is delegating a portion of their power in their absence because of a medical illness or.
Yeah, maybe that family's in crisis and they just can't take care of their kids at that moment. And so we don't want to punish them and take their kids permanently away if they're doing the right thing and seeking out help.
Okay. And is that a legal transferring that power over to the state families? Is that and is there any cost associated with that?
There's no cost to the state because it's strictly on, it's funded through
Okay, is there a
donations.
cost to the family?
There's no cost to the family.
All right, so how do they transfer that? How do they give that power?
It's something that, like Safe Families is one of the organizations, they would incur any cost that it would incur in the transfer.
Okay. And then, in doing so, it does not, I guess, terminate or eliminate the parental.
That's correct. At any point in time, it's strictly on a voluntary basis of the parents. So at any point in time, they can say they can take their kids back at any point in time.
We're all done with this, and we can have their kids come back. And then the other question I had about this is, what you are doing is directing child protection to, if a case comes to it, if they're notified, in certain circumstances, they then are to notify the parent, the custodial parent, that this option is available to them?
Yeah, you may have a situation where there's, the child services is called maybe through a hotline, but it turns out there's no reason to take kids away, but that family may need help. So it's just kind of like a referral system.
Okay. All right, we're ready for your call-in now. Let's go ahead and do that. Do we have questions that we want to go to? All right.
Whatever your order is.
Okay, let's go ahead and do questions from the committee. Representative Lauer.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, to inquire.
You may.
Thank you. Representative, we received a letter from Missouri Association of School Administrators. You probably received that as well, regarding some of the concerns that they had in regard to medical care and if there are divorced parents and so forth. And I would like for you to go ahead and respond.
I don't have the letter sitting in front of me.
Okay. Then just briefly, first of all, it talks about a person being able to sign over the power of attorney certainly creates confusion as to the rights of the other parent, especially if the parents are divorced, separated, or unmarried. So how would that be handled, particularly, and it says then if it's putting the school and educators in an impossible situation of knowing which adult to communicate with?
Well, I mean, the school's going to have to be notified, of the situation.
So if I have a child and I'm divorced and I give power of attorney to Representative Gannon, and the school needs to contact the parent, would they contact ex-husband, Representative Gannon? Sorry, I don't mean to.
Well, in a situation of if there's shared custody between the divorced parents, I mean, both parents would have to agree to this. One parent can't just go into this agreement and sign over rights.
Okay, so if the parents are divorced, then both parents have to sign the power of attorney for both parents' responsibilities, so that the power of attorney person has total responsibility then for both parents.
Well, I guess you could have a situation where one parent signs it over. But, the school would have to be notified of the situation.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm just thinking about, in response to these questions, how that would be handled from their perspective. Okay, and then also one that they bring up is the residency requirements for a school district. How would that work? If instead of Representative Gannon, I I give a power of attorney to Representative Newman. Would you take my child? But she lives on the opposite side of the state from where I do. How does that work then with the schools?
Usually, the way these programs work is they try to try to be in the community that they live in. So you wouldn't have a situation where someone's in St. Louis and they're going to Kansas City. These programs try to be close to those families as close as possible.
Okay, I could appreciate that, but I grew up in Southeast Missouri. My family's all down there, and I would want them, if I was going to sign a power of attorney, I'd want them to have that, but they're nowhere near where I am.
Well, I mean, you could do that today without this legislation.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
That's not a new problem that is created by this.
Well, I was just going by the 44-day average that you were talking about as to how that would work, just from an implementation standpoint. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Representative Meredith.
Okay, okay. Right now, a lot of us send our kids to camp. We send a permission slip saying they can get health care and I will be responsible for the cost. They go spend the night at a friend's house, all kinds of things happen. And I'm looking at this bill and I'm thinking, as Representative Glover pointed out, there are issues with the school. I know as a CASA, when I go to the school, I take the court order with me. That way, I can get answers from teachers.
Sure, that makes it nice and clear.
Everything's nice and clear. The state is responsible for that child. The state is the guardian of that child. And sometimes we don't do such a good job. Sometimes we do a great job.
When people are involved, you're going to have a wide range of.
Well, one of the things that I'm concerned about is you say that these people go through a screening before they will be able to have a child come into their home. But do they get training too?
Yes, they do.
What kind of training do you know?
It's they have to take a number of classes on how to deal with kids that might be in neglectful situations.
Okay, that leads to two more questions. So this is if a parent becomes ill, a single parent becomes ill, and they need someone to help with their child. Okay, that's pretty obvious. If they don't have a friend or a kinship relationship with someone, they can take care of their child. I see a lot of issues with divorced parents where they don't live in the same area. One parent may decide, okay, I can't handle this anymore, I need help. They're going to go get help. They turn their kid over. The other parent turns around and goes, what are you doing? And the next thing you know, you've got a court battle going on. The other thing is, who pays for medical care for these children?
I would actually have to check on that.
Okay, because that's an issue. I mean, somebody might have a child, they say, for 44 days, it might turn out to be 88 days. They might need to go get their teeth cleaned. They might get sick. They might break an arm, who knows? The kids, we don't know what they're going to do next. The other thing that I was wondering was, how does a person know if it's not a matter of illness? How does a person know, or how are they able to predict that they might neglect their child?
Well, it's not saying that they will, but what we want to do is we want to put families in a situation where they don't neglect their kids, and we want to help them if they need help. And that's what, it's not saying that these families would definitely neglect their kids, but just looking at the statistics from other states, you have kids going into foster care that drop by 20%. So that would show that maybe some families end up not neglecting their kids because they're getting the help that they need. Whether it's direct rehab, maybe they just don't know how to take care of their kids, and so we're trying to prevent that from happening.
Okay, and in my personal experience, usually people who neglect their children, it never occurs to them that that's what they're doing. They have no clue that they are neglecting their children. They're trying to make a living. They're working 2 jobs. They're still eating ramen noodles.
So when you have so the idea is when you have a parent who recognizes that they need help, that we don't want to punish them for getting help. And that's what section 4 of this bill does.
Punish them with removing their child from their home? Is that what you're referring to? Because that's a very dramatic one. I wish, I know that a lot of people feel that foster care is the big demon. And I think that there are some foster parents who really shouldn't be. But I do wish that people who want to help out children would, yeah, you can be a little selective, but I wish that they would be a little more open. And go ahead and if these parents, if these people really want to help children in need, be open about it. Take the kids who need help just because they're there. Go ahead and get the foster training. It's all above board. It's all legal. You don't have to worry about any legal issues. And if more people would come forward who seriously want to help the children, it would be quite wonderful. And personally, that would be my preference. This is kind of a stopgap. I think this would be good for maybe people who become ill and need a lot of help.
Yeah, I mean, this is by no means designed to replace foster care. This is on a voluntary basis of the parents. Foster care is for situations where the parents don't have a choice because they did something that constitutes them getting their kids taken away.
Well, and that would be abusing their children psychologically, physically, sexually, or neglecting their children.
Right, correct.
And parents who do these kinds of things either they just don't know the difference, and it takes a long time to teach a parent, no, you don't pick a 2-year-old up by their arm and swing them around the room and call it play. They don't know. They seriously don't know, and it's very, very sad, and the situations are really, really tough. And I'm hoping that if a system like this is to exist, that we are still very, very careful that we keep these children safe, because unless you're trained to know how to identify the signs of abuse and neglect, you can overlook it. Oh, well, you know, they're just living in the basement for now. No. You know, yeah, well, the kid was really bad.
So Representative, anyway, thank you. Is there any other really important things?
If you look into those concerns, I'd appreciate it.
Sure,
Thank you.
Thank you. We have this hearing room until 1 o'clock, and we have 2 other bills to hear. So we have to kind of jump in here. Do you have a witness on the phone?
Yeah, I can call them.
And I'll just pull, is there anyone here to testify on this bill? Out in the audience, is there anyone out there? One in the very back, okay. Why don't we have their testimony as you gain access?
Sure.
Yeah. In favor, is it? Please come forward. We're gonna multitask right here.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'll try to go quickly because I know we have a lot of things to get to today. For the record, Abram S. with Missouri Family Network. First of all, Representative Meredith, I think you had some wonderful comments. I'll use my, I apologize.
Thank you.
We absolutely need more people to care about foster care. We absolutely need more people to be involved. This legislation, however, I would point out, is designed to specifically assist individuals who understand and have been able to recognize that through either a personal situation or a situation which is outside of their control, they need help. They're willing to be proactive about it. And I think because of that, that makes it a little bit different than an instance where there is abuse or no neglect and different things like that, where the department has recognized these kids have no business being there. So this is a little bit different. So we need to make certain that for those parents that recognize that they need help, let's help them. Let's give them an opportunity and a mechanism to allow them to get the help that they need. Let's refer them to places where they can get the help so that we can get them what they need.
Any questions of this witness? Yes.
Thank you, McGuire. I just had a quick question. Do you think this bill would provide cover or protection to a divorced couple who, say, dad needed some help and he had joint custody, and he, filed this power of attorney so that he could go and get some help? Would that provide him cover in a future modification of custody proceeding if mom, was concerned because of, dad needing help?
That's a very good question. I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV. However, I do think that does make a very valid point. This legislation does not assume, nor does it intend to presume, that every family is a perfect family, nor that every family is what we would refer to as being an intact family. And I think there is room for perhaps some improvements, some clarification in the language to make certain that we are making an accommodation for those individuals whose family structure is maybe not traditional in our sense. Does that help you at all?
Well, it seems like to me the intent is to provide cover and protection from the department, not necessarily, protection in a family unit where mom could come and complain if there's a problem. I'm just wondering if that's the intent, if maybe it does need to be clarified. Maybe not.
I would agree with you that is a concern that ought to be taken into consideration.
That's all the questions I have.
Representative Neely?
And in that inquiry,
You next.
in that same vein, I think that could that be used, say you have a mom or dad that's the legal custodian and divorced from the other, and if that person in charge, the custodian, was having issues, why couldn't the other spouse be involved? I think I can see the attorneys having a field day and potential ongoing legal tussles. And I think that's the same gist that Representative Beard was saying.
Thank you. Be sure to make a witness form. Thank you. Do you have your call, please? Would it be possible to put that on mute while you're trying to make the connection? Or do you have an iPhone that we could use, maybe? And just put it to the mic?
You have a couple of those, you want to just move on.
And forego the call?
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Do we have anyone else we can do that? Do we have anyone else here that wants, we did the in favor. Is there anyone in opposition? Anyone for informational purposes only?
I'm submitting something in writing for informational purposes only. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
One other informational purposes.
I haven't read this bill and I didn't come to testify about this bill, but I could talk about my own situation just from hearing the conversation, if you are so interested.
Well, I guess it's about the contents of the bill? Do you feel that you understand the bill well enough to give us some anecdotal information from your life?
Well, I was in a situation, I think, similar to what he was describing in 1999 when my husband became catastrophically ill and was life flighted from Hannibal to St. Louis, and I had 2 minor children at home. And he spent 9.5 weeks in the hospital, and I had to go to St. Louis to be with him and sign a stack of medical consent forms every day. So it sounds like this might be the type of situation which you're addressing. What I did, I had to call his parents on the spur of the moment to come and stay at my home to take care of my children so they could continue life as normally as possible and attend school while I was away from them. But that wasn't really ideal because that was my husband's parents, and of course they wanted to be with him since he was so close to death. You know, so if this was a voluntary option, then, you know, it could have been another resource for us. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and maybe Representative and I could talk further or something.
Great, thank you. Would you please give us your name?
I'll fill out a witness form, yes.
Yeah, go ahead and identify yourself.
Joanne Schrader.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Any questions of this witness from the committee? All right, closing statements, Representative? Any?
I don't think so. I'd like it if you pass it out and I'll get the answers to those questions.
All right, thank you. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 1433, and I'll just make a comment that I see the fiscal note has now called on that. Okay, great. Representative Wood, you should go ahead. I know you'll be brief.
I did somebody laugh when you said that.
I don't know.
Representative Wood, I represent the 15th District, and I'm here to present to you House Bill number 1877. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and members of the committee for hearing this bill. This bill made it through this committee last year. It was House Bill 556. We have done the perfected version that was actually passed out of the House floor. 556 did not include a small piece of this. That was an amendment that was put on by Representative Blant on the House floor. It made it through the House. There was no objections, no problems. Got it to the Senate. They tend to put a few amendments on themselves. Came back. There was one amendment we had to make some adjustments on. Got it to the conference committee. Had the conference report signed by the House, and then the Senate went into their situation and was not able to pass it on through. So this was, I mean, at the door of going to the governor's office last year.
Well, we hope it's equally as worthy this year.
Yes, the original bill is. There's very few modifications to it. The first piece of the bill deals with the registry on abusive individuals that requires reporting of child abuse to the registry with the Children's Division. Making sure that they're notified and we know those situations when they're happening from the courts. You will see some numbers modified in that section. That's because the bills that we passed last year, the sections have changed their numbers. So that's simply a modification. The number, the content itself did not change. The majority of the bill was dealing with foster care. We all know that when our children turn 18, if you're old enough to have children at that point, that they think they know everything about the world and they're ready to go out and tackle it and don't need us anymore. Well, the children in foster care are the same way. And when they turn 18, many times they leave the foster care system and go out and try and tackle the world, and sometimes they need to come back. Right now, that's an option for them to come back, but there's no guidelines as to who can come back. And this bill puts those guidelines into place. Defines the circumstances for which a youth that has left the system after the age of 18 can return before the age of 21. In other words, they can't have committed a felony. They had to be good players in the system to start with. We've had situations where youth end up in the courts, and sometimes the option is to put them back into foster care and not take appropriate action as to what they've done. This restricts that, gives guidance to the courts of who can be placed back into foster care and that they had to have been the good players in the first place. The only change that I know of that has been made to this section is a couple of sentences have been added. So if the youth want a guardian ad litem appointed, they can get legal representation. It's not a requirement, but they may request it if they feel they need it. Beyond that, I would be glad to take any questions, and I know there are some witnesses here to testify in favor.
Okay. I want to ask you, in the first section on the central registry, there's several things listed here, and perhaps this falls under that, is the human trafficking. Someone who would be convicted of that, does that fall under?
Since it's referenced by the statute numbers, I'm not sure which. I'm sure we have a witness coming up that may be able to answer that. I know that was one of the issues that we did pass last year and should have been included. But a lot of the number changes were due to Senate Bill 5 and the municipal court reviews and things like that, when we change our statute numbers and update them, they had to be updated in the bill.
Yeah, I didn't really follow the trail of the statute numbers either, and I thought perhaps you did.
Well, I had not gone back and looked them all up. But I'm sure someone that's coming up in a moment has.
All right, great. Representative Newman.
Madam Chair.
You may.
Good afternoon, Representative. I have to double check.
Okay.
Really quickly, you mentioned that the Senate added an amendment, or even within their conference committee.
The Senate amendment did not change the content of this bill at all. It was an additional piece that was dealing with representation in all court proceedings. Would have cost the counties to pay for a lawyer to attend every proceeding for anything to do with foster care.
And any of that, is that in your bill this time?
No,
So
we are going back to the original House version. So all of the Senate amendments that were put on last year are not part of this bill.
So they'll go through predictably that same process?
Well, most of the amendments, all but I believe one that was put on in the Senate were passed in other bills. So the Senate amendments will need to be put on, and if they had not passed and there was no objections to any amendment but that one, I would have put them back on.
And was there any House amendments too, or did your bill?
The only
pass out
House
here?
amendment that was put on was Senator or Representative Lyons, and that was dealing with the child registry.
And that's now in
That's
this in bill?
Yes, this is the perfected version.
Great, just wanted to clarify that we're starting a little bit ahead of the game this time.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Do you have some witnesses that you wish to call? Or, I'm
Do you have
sorry, is there a
Senator
question?
Representative?
Representative Neely. You may.
I needed a little clarity there. I got off on another tangent.
I need clarity all the time,
Okay,
sir.
good, excellent. You're the man that provided that. On page 4 of your bill, you have perpetrators age 21 years of age and older. How did that come about, that age, 21, why not 19 or?
The current legislation says that you're 21 years of age or younger, you can re-enter the system.
Okay, I just needed that.
So that, we're not expanding the system in any way, we're just simply clarifying what's already there. And that's the reason the fiscal note is 0.
Yes.
Because we're not expanding any services.
I thought that was it from last year. Thank you.
Did I hear you say that you had not had witnesses specifically that you wanted to call, but you felt that there were some here in favor?
Yes, there is. I'm sure the department is here.
Okay, all right, let's go ahead then. In favor, we'll start with the department.
Well, my name is Stephen Tomlinson with the Department of Social Services. I want to thank the committee for hearing this bill. Thank Representative Wood for sponsoring it. I believe the representative did a great job of summarizing the bill. Representative Franklin, to your question, I think about the human trafficking. I believe the bill currently would cover that. It says, I think on that same language that you were mentioning, any crime under Chapter 566 for the victim of a child. I believe that catches that. I'll double check and get back with Representative Wood to ensure that it does, but I'm fairly confident that it's covered.
Very good. Very good. The department brought saw the need for this. Can you give us a little bit of background?
Yes, well, there are two separate things that came from the department in this bill. The first, the original bill on the reentry into foster care. Mainly that's sort of cleanup of what we've seen in practice. The original idea happened, I think, maybe back in 2011 or so. And just in practice over the years, we've seen a need to add a few things to that. And that's primarily, like Representative was mentioning, where making sure when the youth comes back in that they actually want to work with us. And then doing a few things to ensure that those youth that come back into care get the same sort of benefits, like a guardian ad litem if they need it, like regular hearings, that any other youth in care would be able to secure through that process. And then the other issue is with the central registry. It is said in statute for a long time that if someone is convicted of certain crimes against children, they should go on the registry. What we were worried about at the department is there was no mechanism under law for the courts to give us notice. Now, we're involved in a lot of those cases if the kids are being abused or neglected anyway through the hotline system, but we aren't involved in all of them. And we feel that in order to have a complete registry, this type of notice is important to secure that.
Okay. Any questions for this witness? Please lead us a witness. Let me ask, how many folks are here today to testify on this bill? Great. Are there any citizens here that have come to testify on it? Okay. I mean, I know you're all citizens. Just clarify. Okay, all those in favor, kind of list your, unless you have anything really significant to add, because we do have another bill to hear today. Go forward.
Hi, Kelly with the Office of Child Advocate, and I talk really fast. We're in favor of this legislation, specifically about the part of reentry, and I'll switch hats just a little bit, speaking as a foster parent. So foster care for teenagers is not fun. If kids want to come back into care, they really need to come back into care. So let me explain what happened to one of my kiddos. We successfully reunified him, and then things didn't work out again with his father. And so he had to leave his father's home. He was over the age of 18. At the time, his original legislation hadn't passed, so he couldn't come back into care. So he went to go live with another family member. I picked him up from that house after that family member stabbed him. I know some of you probably wondering why I didn't just let him back into my home, but I had a teenage girl living in my home at the time, and that's how foster babies are made. So he ended up being homeless. And it was an awful thing to watch, to have one of my sons living in a car, couch surfing, living from house to house. Did he like being in foster care? Absolutely not. He didn't like curfews, he didn't like rules, he didn't like teams making decisions on his behalf. Did he know he needed to be back in foster care? Yes. So I appreciate your efforts in clarifying and strengthening this. He is a success story. He is a father now. He has a fabulous full-time job, and he's a wonderful young man. Still one of my kiddos, but he's actually a man now.
Good, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Thank you for your testimony. Please be sure to leave the floor. Thank you. Others in favor?
Good morning. My name is Mary Chan. I'm with Missouri Coalition of Children's Agencies, and for reasons already stated, we are very much in support of this language, specifically regarding reentry. Clarifying the process will make it possible for older youth who are prepared and ready to come back into foster care to be able to avail themselves of services and hopefully get the support they need to launch into adulthood.
Questions? Thank you. Be sure to give us a witness form. Others in favor?
Good afternoon. I think it is by now. Judy Duncan, Missouri Children's Leadership Council. Very briefly, we're in support of this legislation. This is actually happening nationwide. It's recognized around the nation as the right thing to do for these children, particularly under the circumstances that the representative has written into the bill. So congratulations to him for bringing this to Missouri, and we want to express our strong support.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Marcia Hazelhurst. I'm with Missouri Juvenile Justice Association, and we do also support the bill as written and really appreciate Representative Wood's efforts to clean up some legislation and get us all moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Others in support? Anyone in opposition? Oh, did you want to come forward? Anyone in opposition? We did informational purposes from the department. I think, is there anyone else? Informational purposes, certainly.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Colleen Coble with the Missouri Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. I know the sponsor is aware we have been talking with the department, just wanting to ensure there are no unintended consequences from the provision in 210-118 of adding in all actions under Chapter 455, which is the Adult Abuse Act. It has provisions in it for both adult orders of protection and child orders of protection. It's rather a unique category of law. They are civil orders with criminal penalties. There's a lot of inconsistency throughout the state how these orders are issued. So just to let you all know that we're still in discussion with the department and other attorneys to make sure that there's no unintended consequences in linking that chapter of law to the automatic inclusion on the Child Abuse and Neglect Registry. We're real close, but at least wanted to alert the committee that those discussions were going on. And if there are any questions from the chair, I would respond.
Thank you for your testimony. All right, Representative, do you have any closing comments?
I just very briefly, any issues with conflicts, I'm more than willing to work with the departments and make sure that those are resolved. This is a great idea that we need to get through. We need to have the language cleaned up and clarify who can re-enter and get the registry cleaned up as well. So I appreciate you bringing this forward so quickly. Hopefully we can get to the Senate quickly and actually get this done this year. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That will close our hearing on 1877, and we're ready now for Representative Miller with House Bill 1370. Another bill that we've heard in committee passed out. You may begin when you're ready, Representative Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to bring this to you again. For the record, I'm Rocky Miller, representative from District 124 of the Lake of the Ozarks area. House Bill 1370 is a common sense bill. Currently in Missouri, a custodial parent is notified of every medical action taken on behalf of their minor children with the exception of one. It takes one custodial parent to allow an abortion to be performed on a minor child in Missouri without any notification to the other parent. This bill would require that both parents be notified prior to the medical procedure. The intent of this bill is to keep all parents aware of medical procedures being performed on their minor children. In addition, I have added that if for some reason a parent has committed a myriad of offenses, they are not a good actor, they are not a good parent, then that parent does not need to be notified. I wrote this bill because I was unaware as a custodial parent I could be left out of this monumental decision for my child. See, I was a custodial parent, and my minor child became pregnant. I was blessed. I was notified immediately. In fact, it happened the very day, and I met my ex-wife and my daughter at Planned Parenthood, and we had a discussion there. We had longer discussions about it, some informational gathering, and in the end, my minor daughter decided to bless us with a grandchild. And in 2 months, that grandchild becomes 10, going on 20 or 30, I'm not sure yet, but she's great, she's fantastic, been a blessing. In addition, my daughter, and I'm not gonna say it was easy, it wasn't, it's hard for her. However, she's now in her second degree. Probably the only really bad thing is she married an engineer. I don't know how that happened. And they blessed us with our first grandson. And they actually live just down the road from us. So I realize how blessed we were. And the problem is other families are not. And I think it's only common sense to give this notification where warranted.
This bill last year had some stuff on there about public entities discriminating against alternative agencies, and that part has been removed. So there is no part of that. This is just the pure bill, as I like to say. So that's all the information I currently have. If you have any questions, I'm open for questions.
Are there questions for the sponsor? Representative Neely.
Good afternoon, Representative. Yes, we talked about this bill quite an extent last year, and I'm asking you, even with your bill this year, how do you guarantee the safety of every minor that has to talk to both parents before this legal procedure?
We put as many as we can exceptions to the have to notify the other parent. So basically, if they look like they're a bad actor or they have a previous history of that, then we don't have to. But honestly, there's no guarantees in this law.
So there's no guarantee in this bill that a minor would have to be thrown out of their house, suffer any type of physical abuse. Is there any guarantee there?
That can all happen now, and very few of my bills have guarantees.
So why would we want to put our minors in jeopardy of their safety in this type of an emotional situation?
I think a discussion among people that have been good parents is something we should have. We currently don't have to have that, and this bill does it. And so, am I concerned for the minors? Yes, that's why we try to put as much information in there, or as much ability to discount the other parent as we possibly could.
Based on current convictions, correct?
Convictions, and then also orders of protection, things that don't require conviction.
So basically, for a minor to guarantee their safety, they would have to get that order of protection first.
Well, currently under the law, they can go straight to a judge without any parents and get an abortion if they so desire. If they feel like there's no guarantee that the custodial parent, that the parent that either parent would keep them from being harmed. So there's that option too.
But you are aware that this does place certain teens in danger.
I'm aware that the medical procedure itself is very, very dangerous, and in fact, it's fatal to one of the people participating in it.
Thank you, Representative.
Other questions? Representative Meredith.
What kind of protection is there in this bill? Because I'm not reading it closely enough. What kind of protection is there for the child who maybe they have parents that fight all the time? They've been neglected. A 16-year-old isn't going to think to go to a judge. And maybe there's nothing, there's no history of recorded abuses within the family. Because a lot of times they don't talk, they change their mind. Somebody gets beat up all the time, they don't say anything to anybody because, well, they're afraid. And like Representative Newman, I'm concerned about the young women who are pregnant and don't really have anyone to turn to, but maybe a really good friend or a teacher, and they can't talk to those parents either. But there's nothing recorded that says they are an abuser. How do we protect them?
Again, if they're too afraid to go to a doctor or Planned Parenthood, there's nothing in this bill that would make them do that. However, if they do go to that, then it's incumbent upon the doctor or Planned Parenthood, the abortion provider, to know this law. And this law has been in effect. This changes nothing in the part that you're talking about. It now current law allows that child to go to a judge and get the right to get an abortion.
So then they would need to, most of the kids all know about Planned Parenthood. They know it's out there. So if they were to go to Planned Parenthood would then say you need permission from the parents. Could they help them navigate that route to the judge or something?
I would assume they can. Probably the questions they ask are, can you get a parent in here? Because it currently only takes one parent, not both, to approve. So you get a custodial parent in there. If not, then I'm sure that in areas like Kansas City, St. Louis, and areas like that, I'm sure there's probably judges that are more than happy to help.
I'm concerned about these young women. I'm also concerned about making laws that kind of, you know, we all talk about freedom and get government out of our lives, and this kind of sticks it in there one more time.
Well, I think when it comes to my minor child, I think I deserve to know what's happening to my minor child that I have custodial rights over.
You have a good relationship with your child, and that's wonderful. Congratulations on that. And
Representative Brown.
To inquire.
You may.
Okay, let me make sure I understand, because I think I'm hearing you say one thing and her saying another thing. Today's real world, for the abortion to be performed, a parent has to be involved in most cases.
In most cases, currently though, if they are afraid of both parents or they have right to be, they can go directly to a judge, currently under current law.
So you're not changing any of that. Today, one parent must be notified, but now the change is that.
No, neither parent would have to be notified.
Under your situation, if one parent is notified, the second parent also needs to be notified normally, under normal conditions.
Under normal conditions, my understanding that is that a judge, and there's a very lengthy ability to do so, but a judge then can authorize the minor child to receive an abortion without notifying either
Right.
parent.
So you're not changing any of that.
No.
You're only changing the fact that the second parent can be notified.
Correct. Yes, it's notification only. The big confusion on this one is everybody thinks, oh, you're going to have both parents agree to it. No, that's not the case.
They just have to be notified.
Just have to be notified.
Thank you very much.
How are they notified, Representative?
It's in the very first part of the bill, there's a requirement that the attending physician gets written consent of the minor and one parent or guardian. And then they also have to be in written consent that the consenting parent or guardian of the minor has been notified the other custodial parent or guardian in writing prior to the securing of the informed written consent of the minor and one parent. So basically what you have to do is you have to write down that you attempted or you notified the other person. The consenting custodial parent has to fill out a piece of paper that says, I notified the other parent in writing. And that's given to the doctor along with the other two pieces of information, the written consent of the minor and written consent of the custodial parent.
So is that a legal document, or is it just I signed my name that I have done this?
Yeah, I mean, all three pieces are, you know, I'm not, again, as someone already said, I'm not a lawyer, don't play one on TV. I hire a bunch of them, it appears, but no. It's just written consent, and as followed. Yeah.
Representative Miller, is there anyone here that you have invited to testify that would be a citizen, someone?
Actually, I did. The last two times that we've had this, we had a local CPA from your district, from Lane Creek, show up, and she couldn't make it today. She will be sending in writing her testimony to you all. But the gist of it, just to give you a reminder, is that she was a minor child. Her mother kind of whisked her off to have an abortion. She had an abortion. Her father later found out about it and said, I would have done anything to help you. And, you know, probably the most powerful thing she says is she currently has 3 children, and she looks at them and knows that she should have 4. And it's pretty powerful.
All right, let me get a feel for the room then. How many of you folks are here to testify on this bill that will come forward and testify? Okay, and then so how many are going to be testifying in favor of the bill? Okay, and how many would be, raise your hand if you're in opposition? Okay, so it's pretty evenly. And what we'll do is we'll do 1 in favor and 1 in opposition, just to try to work through everyone before we lose our committee room. Those in favor, someone come forward in favor, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Susan Klein, representing Missouri Right to Life, built upon record in support of House Bill 1370, and we thank Representative Miller for bringing this bill forward again. We believe that if the courts have recognized two parents to be eligible for custody of their child, that they have the right to information for something, a procedure that is going to affect this young minor the rest of her lives. And we still will record in support of this bill.
Are there questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you very much for your testimony. Be sure to leave a witness form. In opposition, please. I'll let you know I have a bill that I need to present in another committee, so Representative Neely, serving as vice chair, will take over.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Megan Mead, and I'm Director of Organizing for Planned Parenthood Advocates in Missouri. I work for both Planned Parenthood affiliates, who are one of the largest reproductive health providers in the state. We serve nearly or over 60,000 men, women, young people in Missouri each year with primarily preventive services, education services, health screenings, treatment for sexually transmitted infections, cancer screenings, and we also provide abortion care. I want to go on record in opposition of this bill. What's most important, and I can see it from this whole line of questioning and in the motivations behind the bills previously discussed today, that this committee cares about the health and safety of children and teens in this state, and that is our primary concern at Planned Parenthood as well. Unfortunately, we don't think this bill will do anything to further the health and safety of the teens in this state, and in fact, has been discussed and Representative Newman mentioned, could put them in danger, in harm's way, and for that reason we oppose it. And not only do we oppose it, the other large medical associations, the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Public Health Association also oppose these parental involvement laws, because research has shown they don't increase parental involvement. Fortunately, the majority of teens do involve a parent when they're faced with an unintended pregnancy, but for those that don't, and again, I think the testimony on the previous bills about the problems in families in this state that we're trying to address in other ways are real, and they impact the teens, and that this bill could put them in harm's way, and that's why the other medical providers are opposed. I do also, as a healthcare provider, our healthcare providers, I think there's questions about compliance here. There were some questions about that earlier in terms of in Chapter 188, the consequences of a physician performing an abortion that don't meet all the stipulations of the chapter, including this one, if it were to pass, the risk is loss of license. And so given that it's the consenting parent's responsibility to search out the other parent and document the notice, and then there are all those exceptions, I think there's a lot of, we have concerns in terms of documenting compliance associated with this new proposed bill, which again won't further the health and safety of teens, which is what I think this committee really has spent the most of this hearing on, and I think wants to spend most of this year on. So I would again reiterate our opposition, and I'd be glad to take any questions.
I have one question, if I may. You mentioned parental involvement and the lack thereof. You've given this some thought, obviously. How would we improve parental involvement in life?
Well, I think comprehensive sex education in schools would be an excellent way, because that's a curriculum that touches on these subjects, these important and sensitive subjects of reproductive health and decision making. And good comprehensive sex education starts with having parental discussions. That's part of the curriculum. And so at that point in schools, our students would be learning, when you have reproductive health questions, go to your parents, talk about it, and they would also be getting medically and factually accurate information in their schools about reproductive health.
Okay. Well, I think there's probably more to that response or thought process than just sex education in regards to parental involvement in life. Are there any other questions in regards to this witness from the panel? Yes, Representative Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Ms. Mead. Another question we've been kind of dancing around here too, in terms of requiring a two-parent consent for a necessary, medical procedure. Aren't we getting into that realm of other medical procedures, and what if those consent would be a two-parent and someone would refuse?
Well, just to clarify, we look at this as a two-parent notice. There is already the current single one-parent consent on the books, and this is adding the second parent notice. So just to clarify that's
right.
What's at issue, and that we don't think that would further the health and safety of kids. And actually, I do also think you want to correct the record. I think there was maybe a misstatement, or maybe I misheard. Abortion is one of the safest procedures done with a very, very low complication rate, and relative to other procedures, I think that you're referencing, Representative Newman, that aren't treated the same way with these kinds of bills or proposed laws change. So it's a very safe procedure.
Exactly. I guess let's get to the point of, in terms of, if this was necessary, if this became law that we needed two-parent for this, would we also need two-parent for any other medical procedures? And therefore, would a parent be able to stop a necessary medical procedure? Because that's essentially what this bill would do. One parent would be able to stop a medical procedure because it would require the notification of both.
I am not sure I have given enough thought to the scenario that you're presenting, but I do believe that the singling out of abortion when it is a safe procedure for these additional requirements different from other medical procedures isn't good policy, and it's not good for the health and safety of teens.
Exactly, and I guess we're getting into that whole gray area of who is that second parent,
and what constitutes
what kind
notice,
of
and what are the
what kind of family. There's all kinds of stuff that we wouldn't have any idea of knowing. And yet, going back to that procedure in terms of the notification becomes more important in terms of the safety and the welfare of the minor.
Right, a concern we have is that notice, if that parent is estranged, or the consenting parent actually has good reasons for not involving the other parent in this or other child rearing decisions, and it's not documented as the citations in the bill, that could put the teen in harm's way, and that could actually override the judgment of the consenting parent.
And what about rape or incest? Is that involved in this bill?
Unless it's documented in the cases, in the subsection that talks about what the second parent would have to do in order to eliminate the responsibility of the consenting parent to notify them. If it's not reported or it doesn't fall under those circumstances, easily we could be telling the consenting parent to notify the rapist that they're seeking an abortion. Absolutely.
Correct, and there's no protection there. There's no protection for the minor in that situation, because obviously there would not be time to have that adjudicated.
These are very time-sensitive issues, yes, and I think it would put, as we said, teens in harm's way in all sorts of awful situations that we just, in the previous testimony, have heard that you recognize that Missouri families struggle, and you're trying to find solutions for them in other ways, and we don't think that this is a good solution for the teens.
Exactly. I think, yeah, you pointed out these previous bills, we're talking about all the different ways we're trying to get parents that are bad actors out of making decisions for their child, and yet in this bill, those parents would be and have to be involved if this became law. So,
thank you, Representative. Are there any other questions? Ma'am, if you'd provide us your witness, we'll move on to the next testimony.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Samuel Lee with Campaign Life Missouri, to go on record in support of House Bill 1370. And Mr. Chairman, we just have emailed and also had copies distributed of my testimony, which I will not read. But just want to point out that parents have a right and an obligation to know what's going on with their children, particularly when their children are going to be making or involved with a life-changing event or decision in their lives. And certainly, being pregnant and making a decision about whether to carry that child to term or not is very, very important. And the ideal is that most cases, both parents should be involved with that. As it has already been stated, our parental consent law has been in effect. It's been upheld by the courts. That is the law right now. We also have a judicial bypass so that none of the parents ever have to give consent if the minor has good reason and the court gives her the right to make the decision for herself. Just adding notice to that. And I think parents should not hear about her abortion the first time when, for instance, they get a call from the hospital that their daughter is in the emergency room and she's bleeding profusely because of a botched abortion. I think parents should not be hearing for the first time when she has a reaction at the abortion clinic because she has an intolerance for a certain type of drug, which the minor did not realize that she had that. Parents should be able to be involved with making these decisions. And if there's an agreement that they're going to go through with the abortion, then the parents could be very much involved with helping her, even being with her at the clinic during that process. You know, most Americans support this type of legislation. A Gallup poll from 2011 found that 71% of Americans support parental consent. And a poll from last year found that 78% of Americans support parental notification. So this is not something which is way out there, but something that the majority of Americans, well over 3/4 of Americans, believe should be the law. And it also has, studies have shown that these types of laws reduce the birth rate for teens and reduces the abortion rate among teens. Studies in Texas have shown decreases anywhere from 11 to 20% for that 15, 16, and 17-year-old age group. We ask your support and to vote this out and do pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Any questions? None, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I will answer. I know Madam Chair is gone. She had a question about the forms, and I just wanted to point out that current law, section 188.055 in the abortion chapter, requires the Department of Health and Senior Services to publish all the forms that this chapter requires. So any new forms that would be required under this law, the department would have to issue those and make sure there are plenty of copies available.
Thank you. Next, if you'll leave your witness form, that'd be great. Okay, thank you, sir. Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Sarah Rossi, Director of Advocacy and Policy for the ACLU of Missouri. I have 3 points to make. I'll try to be brief. But first, I just want to address really quickly what Representative Newman brought up about the juxtaposition between getting parental consent for some procedures and not getting parental consent for others. I think the flip side of that is that there aren't any other simple medical procedures which a teenager would want to get, that the teenager would have the option to go get a judicial bypass to get around their parents' consent to that procedure. The reason that judicial bypass has to exist for abortion is because the Supreme Court of the United States in Roe v. Wade said that there's a guaranteed constitutional right to access abortion services for every woman in the United States, regardless of age. That right doesn't exist for an appendectomy. That right doesn't exist for plastic surgery. The reason that that right exists for abortion is because the Supreme Court has stated repeatedly in Roe v. Wade and again in Planned Parenthood v. Casey that the right to reproductive health care services, including abortion, is fundamental to the liberty and privacy of every woman in the United States of America. So that is the current standard. That's why when there is a consent requirement, there has to be a way to get around that parental consent, because there has to be a way for the teenager to access abortion services, regardless of whether or not her parents wanted to. The other thing I'd like to point out, so we're in a kind of an interesting position right now when it comes to the law surrounding abortion regulations like this. There's currently a case of the Supreme Court that's dealing with how far a state can go in restricting a woman or girl's right to abortion. And it's specifically addressing regulations like ambulatory surgical center regulations, clinical privileges, admitting privileges, things like that. But the standard that the Supreme Court currently uses is the undue burden standard. And that standard was, again, iterated in Planned Parenthood v. Casey, that if an abortion restriction places an undue burden on a woman or a teenage girl in accessing abortion services, that restriction is unconstitutional. The interesting thing about consent and notification regulations is that there are a lot of different levels. And the trend, if you pay attention to the case law across the country with these consent and notification regulations, is that
there are less restrictive and more restrictive versions. So on the less restrictive side, you have one parent having to participate. On the more restrictive side, you have two parents that have to participate. On the more restrictive side, you have consent. On the less restrictive side, you have notification. So if you look at the case law in recent years, the high courts in different states have been overturning regulations that fall on this more restrictive side. So if you have one person consent like Missouri currently has, a lot of courts haven't been overruling that. What they have been overruling is things across that line, like not only requiring consent, but involving two-parent involvement in this decision. So this bill as it stands isn't just towing that line across, it's crossing the line. It's too restrictive and it's falling within this kind of, if you thought of it like a Venn diagram, and you have two parents over here, consent over here, notification here, and right in the center are these types of bills that are not only two-parent involvement, but partially consent. Those go too far. And the trend in the country now is to overturn bills like that because it puts girls at risk. That's an undue burden. Having to divulge abuse or sexual assault or anything like that to a parent who you don't feel safe talking to, or asking you, the parent you do trust, to tell the parent you don't trust about it, goes too far. So that's where it's going. That's where this case law is going. So you're really putting the state of Missouri at risk if you pass this bill, because I think it's a litigable issue. On a personal note, before I was at the ACLU of Missouri, I was the legal director at a statewide domestic violence and sexual assault coalition. And every time a bill like this came up, regardless of the fact that it didn't fall squarely into our mission, we opposed it, because we know for a fact that sexual assault victims and domestic violence victims are made less safe when they have to involve their abuser in their medical treatment, or any decision they have to make for that matter. So across the board, didn't matter, we always oppose them. Victims of violence, whether it be domestic violence or sexual assault, will experience that either in their family or usually at the hands of an acquaintance who knows their family. You can't force kids to talk to parents that they don't feel safe talking to about a constitutional right that they can exercise, regardless of whether the parent wants them to, by accessing a judicial bypass. So those are my points. I think I made all three. I might have made four. Apologies if I went on a little long, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I believe your witness form. Thank you. Next.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, committee, for the record, Kerry Messer on behalf of Missouri Family Network, Americans United for Life. I was going to talk about judicial bypass. It's been covered very well. Our society struggles, though, to foster civility in divorce and broken family situations. Personally, and as I've talked to other people about this legislation the last few years, I can't come up with something more uncivil and more unsettling and more putting families at risk than for one parent to be left out of such a monumental decision to find out after the fact, where emotions are so high, whereas the simple notification allows for a discovery of resources, commitments, processing time, all the different things necessary for the stability of that family that's already suffered some of the greatest brokenness it's ever going to face because of the divorce of the parents. As far as the health and safety is concerned, I'm only hearing one perspective here, but wouldn't it be important for the second parent to know what the world's going on for a minor child when they come into the home and they're experiencing post-procedure complications? One of the more common abortion procedures has to do with oral abortifacients. The patient, in this case a minor child, takes a pill in the clinic and then goes home and possibly goes into that second home where that parent knows nothing of what's going on and takes that second pill in that environment. That parent has no idea what the world is happening when that child is now losing that baby on the commode. It seems to me that if we're concerned about the safety and health of these children, the both parents need to know what the world's going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions? Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, representatives. My name is Allison Dreef, and I'm the Executive Director of NARAL Pro-Choice Missouri. NARAL Pro-Choice Missouri was founded in 1969. We're a statewide affiliate of NARAL Pro-Choice America and Missouri's largest grassroots organization working to protect reproductive freedom in the state. NARAL stands in opposition to HB 1370. This is the first of 13 bills filed in the House that already seek to put more restrictions on a woman's constitutionally protected right to seek abortion and reproductive health care. In your efforts to make abortion inaccessible to as many women as possible, anti-choice forces in the Missouri legislature have focused on burdening minors' access to abortion. Although the vast majority of young women, particularly younger teens, involve their parents without having the one parent consent, this is not a decision we can make for all minors who seek an abortion. Some young women who are in an abusive or difficult family situation do not feel that they can turn to their parents, let alone both. This measure will not protect the health and promote the best interests of young women and improve family communication. No law can mandate good family communication. I'm middle-aged and I still have poor communication with my family. In reality, these bills threaten the health and safety of young women in numerous ways, and I'll try not to go into too much detail since my colleagues have already pointed some out, but delaying abortion can, and sometimes, result in a second trimester, rather a first trimester abortion, which is sometimes more costly. Physical and emotional abuse. Some women do not voluntarily involve their parents in abortion decisions because they fear more abuse. Forced motherhood. Girls are constitutionally protected to have bodily autonomy, and this body should not be taking those decisions away from them. Safe or illegal abortions, which I'm sure all of us could agree that we want to make sure this bill wouldn't lead into teens in desperate situations may do desperate things. And in order to avoid the requirements of forced parental involvement laws, some young women will attempt to self-abort, seek dangerous illegal procedures, or harm themselves. And interference with access to confidential medical care. Forced parental involvement laws will lead some young women to believe that they cannot receive any confidential reproductive health care and decrease their likelihood to seek out birth control or sexually transmitted infection treatment. Because these harms project major professional organizations have spoken out against parental notification, like the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Public Health Association, and the American Medical Women's Association all oppose these laws. Not only are more track laws coming up in the Supreme Court later this year, but some states have already overturned laws like parental notification, such as the case of Florida and Alaska. For example, you can look up Planned Parenthood of the Great Northwest et al. Versus the state of Alaska that has already turned down similar measures. That's all I have to say.
Just want to clarify here, does this bill make it where a minor woman who seeks an abortion cannot get a court injunction should she fear any repercussions from either, both, or one of her parents?
No, but as previously stated, that court proceedings take a long time, and that may take the minor longer to receive an abortion, making the abortion move from a first trimester abortion to a second trimester abortion, where it's much.
So Planned Parenthood, do they have a relationship typically with certain judges who give these court orders? And if so, about how?
I don't work for Planned Parenthood, so I can't answer that question.
Do you know how long it takes to get a court order? Typically?
No, I don't know. I don't work in the court system.
Thank you.
Other questions? If not, leave your representative Meredith. No? That's it. Thank you for your testimony. If you leave your witness form. Anyone else to speak?
My name is Diane Schrader, and I'm here in favor of House Bill 1370. I think it's wrong to assume that the second parent is the one who's the bad actor. It's possible that one parent could be pressuring the minor child into obtaining an abortion when it's the other parent who would offer the support and protection to that minor child and her unborn offspring. There have been cases where it's the incestuous parent who is the one that is pressuring or taking the child to the abortion facility to have the abortion and to cover up the incestuous relationship. And just want to add, abortion is rarely a necessary medical procedure. It's an elective procedure. Abortion facilities have a vested, especially a financial interest in the teen getting an abortion. And I don't believe this bill would block access to other non-abortive reproductive health care for teens.
Thank you. Are there any questions? We'll turn this back over to the chair.
All right. I'm sorry, I had to step away and testify in another hearing, and I wanted to go back to Representative Miller, if I may. What you're wanting to do here is what could have happened in the situation with your daughter was that your ex-wife, her mother, could have facilitated the abortion taking place.
Yes, they had the appointment set up already.
Okay. And if your daughter had any medical conditions that would have made it maybe a reconsideration for doing a procedure like that in a location like that, your wife and your ex-wife could have not disclosed that at the time?
Yeah, I mean, there's a myriad of reasons why, as a good custodial parent, that you should be notified of what's going on. The other parent may not have the knowledge, to be quite honest, and you might be the record keeper of what particular drug or food or something that affects the child wrongly or in an adverse condition. But so you know, to me, it just, you know, do I want the minor child to be hurt or harmed in some way from another parent? No, that's not the deal here. I just think that it's healthier for the minor child in a lot of cases if both parents are aware of what's going on and that they can talk about it and discuss it. And like I said, we were very blessed, but it honestly could have gone the other way. It could have gone the other way, and that's just the way it is.
And so you were financially responsible for the child at the time as well?
I had true physical custody and shared in the financial cost of the child.
How many families find themselves in that situation? I think what it speaks to is rather than families are by nature difficult to be in many times, especially when they reach the age of, the teenage and et cetera. And it having the ability, I think, to confer with both parents is advantageous for youth at this time. They confer on schooling decisions, they confer at that time on what kind of car they're going to be driving, or whether they have cell phone, who's going to pick them up for band practice. There are so many things that go into family. And I think that's one of the discussions that has been left out of this, is that there can be and are certainly families that we wish children did not grow up in, but there are certainly families where the parents don't get along, have become divorced, yet they are in charge of the children. And we need to give the opportunity for those ex-spouses or even the spouses at that time to weigh in. And I know that I've heard some interesting things about constitutionality and judges, and we also know that judges at times overstep what their real purpose is, which is to look at the law and to interpret it, and they may interpret it through a lens that may be considered overstepping of what is in the best welfare of the family. So kids are important to all of us, and I think your bill is just another way of saying that families matter, and for parents to confer about what happens to their children matters. So we're out of time. Somebody's going to pull my chair out from underneath me.